goats as invasive species management tools, impacts of grazing on vegetative coverage.
Hello. So my name is Liz, and I represent a team of graduate students and professors, and we're investigating the use of domestic goats to control invasive vegetation. So we all know invasive species are bad news. They're a leading threat to biodiversity. They're hugely expensive, both in the damage they cause and the management efforts that we use to control them. A lot of these management efforts aren't as effective as we would like them to be. And a lot of them carry unintended consequences and some collateral damage. And so it's increasingly necessary that we find creative and potentially mutually beneficial solutions, cost-effective solutions to this invasive problem. So we want, such as getting rid of invasive vegetation by feeding them to livestock. So we chose goats because they're smaller, they're easily dealt with, they have a lower impact than larger, heavier livestock, and more importantly, they're browsers, not grazers. So they will eat just about anything, including your data sheets, as this goat insisted on demonstrating repeatedly. So our study site was Heritage Island. It is an urban spoil island located in the Anacostia River in Washington, D.C. It is a designated natural area, and it is currently managed by a non-for-profit educational organization, Living Classrooms. And we worked with them to set up our site. The three rectangles outlined here are our controls, and then this is the southern tip of the island, and this orange triangle are where the goats were grazing. So this gives you an idea of the type of habitat we were dealing with. This is our experimental plot G prior to the goats' arrival. We randomly distributed 10 meter by meter quadrats in each of our plots and measured the percent coverage of each species. We identified 29 species in total, 12 of which were exotic and 17 were native. And although the native species were slightly more diverse, the area was completely dominated by invasive species. You can see from this bar graph that exotics comprise 3 to 4 times the amount of area of native species, and that was representative of all 4 of our plots. So we rented a herd of goats, roughly 40 goats, from a private company called Eco Goats, and we penned them off into the southern tip of the island and let them have it. They grazed continuously for 4 days, and we did go and make visual observations on their grazing behavior for validation purposes, as well as a form of work avoidance, because sitting in nature watching goats is a welcome escape from graduate school. And you can see both from this picture and this bar graph that they had a substantial impact on the vegetation. They really went to town on it. And we ran an ANOVA, and those decreases were significant, both for exotic species and for native species. So they just ate everything. But given the fact that the exotic species were proportionally far more prevalent, we wanted to investigate if the goats were grazing on each species type equally. And it turns out that they were not. So this is the change. We analyzed the change in the ratio of exotic to native species. So a smaller number represents a higher proportion of natives, so that's a good thing. And you can see that after our grazing treatment, the exotics were disproportionately affected by this grazing. So this indicates that goats were preferentially grazing these exotic species over native ones, so that's a good thing. So it indicates that they do have potential as a low-impact, cost-effective management tool. However, there's always a caveat. We've recently resurveyed our island, and there's been an impressive amount of regrowth during the growing season. I did not see that coming. We could barely find some of our sites. And pending analyses will determine if exotics are still the dominant species or if there's been a shift in assemblage. And we're also planning a second grazing treatment to investigate possible cumulative effects on multiple grazing treatments. And so don't go out and buy a herd of goats just yet to help your neighbor with their porcelain berry and Japanese honeysuckle. But this is a very positive first step in this direction. So, thank you.